You woke with the weight of oppressive heat seeping through the narrow gaps of the coarse linen tent, the bitter scent of burned incense still lingering in your weary nostrils. Outside, the desert stirred slowly, the distant crackle of flames from the priest's torches marking the start of yet another day swallowed by endless rituals. Your hands trembled slightly as you smoothed the golden sands scattered across the cold floor, preparing to decipher the stars that, according to the ancient prophecy, might seal your fate. Each movement repeated with the monotonous precision of centuries, tracing symbols on hardened parchment, watching the alignment of stars that seemed indifferent to your silent fear. The rough cloth of your cloak scratched your bare skin, and the wind carried the whispering sound of prayers begging protection against the inevitable. A routine task, perhaps eternal, shadowed by a sentence: survive or succumb to the mysterious celestial forecast. Slowly, the ritual dragged on, exhaustion settling as a constant companion, wrapped in the smell of old papyrus and the crushing silence of the approaching night. The silence inside the tent bore a different weight, an invisible promise, clinging to your already damp skin before the first ray of sun even appeared. The pale gold of the sand outside stretched endlessly under the dim morning light, the vast desert still holding its breath as the camp gradually came to life. The crackling of torches echoed faintly from beyond the dunes, joined by distant murmurs that flowed like a soft tide through the dry air. The bitter aroma of burning incense wove itself tightly with the dry heat and the scent of worn parchment and sweat. The scratchy touch of the tent's linen brushed against your skin, coarse and unyielding, as you sat cross-legged on the cold sand, hands shaking as you traced the ancient star maps. If today your phone battery dying sends you into a panic, imagine depending solely on the shifting stars to navigate the fate they've cast for you. Your fingers grazed the brittle edges of the scroll, each symbol painstakingly redrawn, lest a single stroke falter. Your breath came slow, measured, mingling with the quiet rustle of robes and whispered prayers outside, a fragile cocoon of routine, shielding you from the immensity of the days yet to come. The fire at the camp offered a subtle warmth, flickering shadows that danced just beyond the tent's lip. For a fleeting moment, the simple crackle and glow sparked a gentle peace deep within you, an ember of hope in the vast emptiness. Yet no calm lasted long here. Your eyes flicked upward, drawn to the sky, where stars hung like cold, unblinking eyes. Suddenly, the murmurs ceased. The desert's breath seemed to hold, the air heavy and expectant. Above, a single star shifted against the celestial pattern, an impossible movement that sent a ripple through your spine. The prophecy was changing before your eyes. The stars, no longer silent witnesses, but heralds of something new, something unspoken. Now is the moment that holds the promise of survival or the shadow of demise. Before Morpheus claims you completely, quickly check if you're still subscribed. For some, the button has vanished, and I don't want you to miss the next stories to fall asleep by. Take a soft like a pillow's touch, and tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Your presence keeps this quiet corner alive. Thanks for being part of it. You eased back into the shifting sands. The coarse granules cool beneath your fingertips as the sun stretched its pale fingers above the horizon. The air was already thick, a suffocating press that seemed to push against your ribs, making each breath deliberate and measured. Outside the tent, the murmurs resumed, soft voices folding into one another like dry leaves stirred by the breeze. Your hands hovered over the cracked parchment, tracing the well-worn symbols again, doubts blooming slowly like shriveled petals in your chest. The unyielding weight of the prophecy no longer felt like a distant burden, but a living, breathing presence pressing against your skin. You notice the way the flame from the nearby torch flickered, sending shadows to dance like restless phantoms across the tent's linen walls. The scent of incense intensified, sharp and acrid, mingling with the faint salt of sweat that clung to your temples. Your fingers lingered on a glyph that seemed to shift in meaning every time your gaze returned to it, the lines undulating like mirages over the desert heat. Outside, footsteps crunched softly, deliberate and slow, as if the very earth beneath you was moving with its own secret purpose. Your heart tightened with the memory of the star's impossible movement. A disturbance, subtle but undeniable. The very fabric of the prophecy had frayed overnight. With cautious resolve, you rose, the sand slipping beneath your bare feet, each grain cool and resistant. The desert stretched around you like an endless ocean, its waves silent, save for the soft crackle of embers from the dying fires along the camp's edge. The sky, a vast dome of pale blue, bore no immediate sign of change. Yet, in the back of your mind, the shifting star refused to be ignored. You stepped toward the entrance, the coarse linen brushing the back of your neck with a prickling chill. Outside, the priests moved with ritualistic precision, their long shadows warped by the low sun. Their chants drifted faintly, words ancient and worn thin by repetition, practiced like a hymn of survival against an unknown, relentless fate. You tucked the scroll carefully beneath your cloak, its brittle surface whispering promises and threats as it shifted against your skin. Something urged you forward, a quiet desperation mingled with fear, compelling you to seek out the one place said to reveal truth buried beneath the endless sands. Your steps fell deliberately slow, each footfall sinking slightly into the dunes. The desert held an oppressive silence, pierced only by the faint crackle of distant flames and the soft rustle of fabric worn by years of pilgrimage. Your breathing slowed, The dry air rasped past your lips with the dryness of old parchment. Around you, the landscape rippled with heat, but within you, a cold sense of inevitability settled, firm and unyielding. Far ahead, a cluster of jagged rocks jutted upward like broken teeth, their rough surfaces catching and twisting the morning light into long, wavering shadows. You remembered the tale whispered among the elders of a hidden chamber beneath these stones that could reveal what the stars concealed. Whether salvation or doom, this secret lay buried just beyond the dunes, waiting for a hand brave enough to uncover it. As you approached, the sand changed texture, softer, more granular, slipping beneath your feet as if resisting your progress. Your skin prickled with tension, every nerve attuned to the smallest sound, the faint brush of wind against stone, the shift of a pebble rolling free. You paused often, chest tight, listening to the whisper of the desert's breath mingled with your own. The scorch of the sun drifted closer, but you barely noticed. The desert's heat was a constant companion now, pressing down without mercy. When you finally reached the tallest boulder, you knelt, hands spreading wide against the rough surface, the stone warm already from the morning sun. You ran your fingers over a faint carving, its edges worn smooth by centuries of sand and wind. The symbol was familiar, a twin, to one traced on the scroll you carried. Disconnected pieces, perhaps, waiting to be aligned. You closed your eyes, feeling the grit of sand cling in crevices beneath your nails, the subtle vibrations of the earth beneath your palms, whispering secrets in a language too old to understand. A sudden gust stirred the air, carrying with it the acrid hint of smoke and a whisper of something darker, something unspoken. Your eyes snapped open. Above, the sky deepened, the sun swallowed slowly by an unclouded expanse, turning sharper, as if nature herself braced for what was coming. The symbol on the stone seemed to glow faintly, a breath of warmth where none should be. You stood abruptly, the brittle scroll taped carefully beneath your cloak, your breath catching in the thick heat. The path back to the camp lay stretched behind you, but your attention was fixed ahead, on the rising shadow just beyond the rocks, where a faint crackling, like distant flames licking dry brush, teased at the edges of your hearing. The desert held its secrets close, but something had shifted. The stars had spoken, and now the sands whispered, urging movement, change, a restless pulse beneath the vast, indifferent sky. You took a long, slow breath, the rough texture of the scroll pressing softly against your side, and stepped forward into the encroaching shadow, the cool promise of night still far away. And in that moment, just beyond the rock's jagged edge, a faint glimmer caught your eye, an unnatural flicker, as if the very air bent and shimmered with a presence unseen, waiting patiently to be discovered. You paused at the jagged edge, where shadows curled beneath the noon. Sun, your breath shallow and deliberate, dust motes swirling like tiny specters around your movement. The desert air weighed heavily, dry and thick, settling in the hollow of your throat, as if the heat itself were pressing pause on the world. Your fingers brushed again over the faded glyph on the stone, its curves whispering secrets too ancient for your memories to grasp. Murmurs carried faintly on the slow wind that stirred small tufts of sand at your knees. Your heart beat slower, yet each thump echoed loudly in the vast emptiness. The silence around you bolder than any roar. The distant crackle behind the rocks teased your hearing, a slower, softer kind of fire, one that seemed less a destruction and more a signal, a quiet call from the earth itself. You felt the grit of the desert sand cling beneath your nails, the tiny granules shifting as you shifted your weight, grounding you in the present moment, despite the mounting weight of unknown futures. You leaned your forehead against the cool stone for a heartbeat, the rough texture anchoring you amid the rising tension. The sun's angle shifted imperceptibly, lengthening the stone's shadow, like slow ink blots spilling across thirsty sand. Within those darkest waves, your eyes caught the faintest shimmer, a heat ripple that bent the very air, something alive, yet hidden just beyond the edges of your senses. A sudden pulse of expectation rippled through your veins, as if the desert itself were holding its breath for a secret to unfold. Gathering your resolve, you rose carefully, the scroll heavy against your ribs beneath your cloak's coarse fabric. The brittle parchment whispered softly with each movement, mingling with the faint, acrid scent of incense still lingering in the air. Behind the stones, embers flickered, sending hesitant shadows that stretched themselves like restless fingers toward the sky's tranquil blue. The camp beyond awaited, but your gaze stayed fixed forward, drawn by a silent promise hidden in the trembling heat. Each step you took disturbed the quietude, sand slipping away beneath your feet in muted surrender. The rocks loomed gradually closer, their edges rough and unyielding, worn by wind and time into shapes both jagged and familiar. You traced a slow circle around the cluster, searching for a path that might lead downward, toward the hidden chamber whispered of in tales older than memory, a place where fate's tangled threads might finally unravel. The air thickened, your skin prickled with the rough caress of heat that shimmered over the stone faces. There was an almost imperceptible shift in that stillness, a pause between heartbeats that rendered the desert utterly alive, suspended in a fragile moment, before the next breath, before the next step. The distant murmurs of the priests faded to a softer hum, a soothing current beneath the harsh sun, grounding you in the ritual whose meaning stretched far beyond immediate fear. You crouched low, hands sifting through the finer sand that collected between the rocks, its grains cooler here, shifting with a quiet resistance. The scent of smoke tickled your nose again, less acrid now, more like the faint burn of dry brush settling into ash after a long night. Faint whispers of wind threaded through the crevices, carrying with them the subtle rustling of fabric, the brush of movement impossible to place, as if the desert's own breath was speaking in tongues made of sand and heat. Closing your eyes, you let your pulse slow to match the desert's timeless rhythm, feeling the rattle of dry leaves and distant footsteps settle into the landscape of sound around you. The glyph on your scroll pressed its weight against your side, an unyielding reminder of the fragile thread holding you balanced between endurance and surrender. You peeked again at the sky, where now the unblinking stars hid impatiently behind shifting daylight, their watchful eyes retreating only to return when night swallowed the sand once more. Time seemed to stretch thin. Your breath came slow and measured, mingling with the whisper of grains tumbling over one another, a dry cascade falling with patient insistence beside your knees. Small particles skimmed your wrists and ankles, fine and relentless as the story etched into parchment, each symbol a step deeper into the labyrinth you were bound to navigate, each line a slender thread tethering you to uncertain outcomes. A sudden, faint crack whispered to your left, a sliding stone, barely stirring, but impossible to ignore. Your body tensed, every nerve prickling along the rough fabric of your cloak, the weight of the scroll holding steady against your chest. The desert held its silence again, thick and expectant. Your footsteps slowed almost to nothing as you turned your head slowly toward the sound. The sun's glow shifted beneath a thin veil of cloud, casting a fragile shadow, as if waiting for the unseen to reveal itself. Your eyes caught movement just beyond the curve of the largest alder, a flicker like a sigh of wind brushing across a mirror, intangible but undeniably there. The air shimmered slightly, a bending of heat that seemed too deliberate to be natural. You leaned forward, breath shallow and steady, the pale light flickering like a fragile heartbeat behind the grains of sand between your fingers. For a moment, you felt both the vast solitude of the desert and the prickling awareness of unseen eyes watching quietly, waiting, patient as the slow turning of the stars overhead. Somewhere beneath the stones, the promise of discovery or danger lay folded into silence, whispering your name in echoes of heat and shadow. And then, as you reached out tentatively, the faintest pulse of warmth radiated from the rock, a glow growing soft and slow, as if the very earth beneath you had decided to speak at last. You crouched just beyond the jagged cluster of stones, the desert air heavy and still as you adjusted the weight of the scroll beneath your cloak. Your fingers brushed again over the worn glyph carved deep into the rock's rough surface, its edges softened by the relentless hand of wind and sand. A dry heat pressed against your skin, crawling like a slow fire from the base of your neck to your fingertips, where grains of sand clung stubbornly, their coarse texture sharp beneath your nails. The distant crackle of dying embers drifted through the heat, coiling around the quiet stillness like a whispered secret you could almost grasp, yet never quite hold. Your breath came shallow and deliberate, curling like smoke in the thick air as it mingled with the faint, burnt scent of incense still lingering from the rituals back at camp. The sky stretched overhead, an expanse of pale blue, gradually deepening toward a harsher glare, while your eyes flicked between the stone's cryptic symbol and the shifting horizon beyond. Every subtle movement felt magnified, the soft scrape of fabric against sand, the faint rustle of distant robes, and the gentle edge of your cloak brushing skin tender from sweat. The desert seemed to lean in, watching, waiting, with a patience that felt more a burden than a blessing. You pressed your palm to the sun-warmed stone, its heat seeping slowly into your skin, a pulse like a quiet heartbeat beneath the harsh geometry of the glyph. The lines, intricate and ancient, seemed to undulate subtly, as if the rock itself breathed in rhythm with the earth's slow tremors. Your fingers traced the outline once more, tentative and slow, memorizing every curve and break that promised answer or warning, hope or despair. The scroll at your side shifted, its brittle pages whispering softly against your leg, faint echoes of forgotten knowledge, folded thin like the fragile thread binding your fate. A sudden breath of wind stirred, brushing dust and tiny sand flakes against your face, carrying with it the acrid tang of smoke. Your head turned sharply, gaze cutting through the haze to catch a flicker beyond the rocks, an unnatural shimmer, the air folding and bending like heat waves caught in a slow dance. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakably out of place amid the desert's dry calm. A tickling sensation crawled along your spine, the hairs standing on end, as if the very atmosphere had shifted, alive and watching beneath the broad, unforgiving sky. You rose slowly, feeling the weight of centuries press on your shoulders. The jagged stones seemed to lean close, their shadows stretching long and thin across the sand, cloaking secrets in darkness even under the harsh noon light. Around you, the distant murmurs of priests drifted again, a muted chorus woven into the desert's breath, a mantra repeated without end, a shield against the unknown that pressed ever closer. Yet here, in the wilderness between fire and shadow, silence held its own dominion. Careful steps led you around the rough formation, sand swipping beneath bare feet, cool and yielding despite the sun's reach. The grains sifted between toes, each step a reminder of time slipping away, the finer dust stirring in lazy spirals as you moved deliberately toward a narrow crevasse nestled between two great boulders. Your fingers glided over the stone's uneven surface, seeking a gap or sign of passage hidden beneath centuries of wind-blown sands. The faintest trace of cool air beckoned, a breath drawn from the belly of the earth itself. A cruel press of heat bled through the narrow space, mingled with the scent of earth, dark and deep, damp as though secrets slept below, untouched by sun or sky. You bent forward, hand brushing lightly against the cool stone that framed the opening, tracing the rough edges while your eyes adjusted to the sudden dimness cast by the narrowing mouth of the cavern. Your body tensed with anticipation, every sense sharpened. The scrape of sand beneath your knees, the muffled whisper of your ragged breath, the muted pulse of ancient life hiding beneath layers of rock and dust. The fading echo of the camp's murmurs became a distant hum, swallowed by the deep quiet of the chamber's mouth. Your fingers slipped onto the scroll again, pressing it close against the soft line of your ribs, feeling the brittleness shiver with each shallow breath. The earth held its secrets just beyond reach, waiting for you to cross the threshold. And as your hand brushed forward, the faintest tremor pulsed beneath the ground. You hesitated, heart beating slow to steady the rising tide of unease. Above, the sun dipped slightly, casting long rays that fractured through the sand in fractured golds and grays. The desert, vast and eternal, seemed to whisper warnings beneath the roar of your blood. The glyph on the stone had burned faintly again, a slow, steady glow that promised both knowledge and peril. You could feel it, an old power awakening, stirring beneath your feet, eager and restless. Taking a slow, measured breath, you leaned into the darkness, the cool, cavern air rushing to meet your skin like a sudden, soft wave against a burning shore. The scent of earth grew stronger, mingling with the faint metallic tang that set your nerves alight. Your fingers lingered on the jagged rocks at the threshold, rough and jagged, a final barrier between the desert's harsh glare and the secrets waiting beneath. And then, just as you began to step deeper, a low murmur rose from the dark, soft, indistinct, yet unmistakably human. Your breath caught. The scroll pressed tight as the flickering shadow along the cavern wall shifted, revealing a shape, a figure, still and silent, watching from the depths where the daylight dared not reach. You stepped deeper into the narrowing shadow cast beneath the jagged rocks. The coolness pressing gently against your skin, like a fleeting caress before the desert's unforgiving. Heat reclaimed its hold. The air here was different, thicker, richer with the scent of earth, cooled stone, and something faintly metallic that tingled at the edges of your senses. A soft, almost imperceptible hum seemed to vibrate beneath the ground, settling into your bones with a slow insistence, ancient and unrelenting. Each breath you drew was measured, deliberate, filled with the dry taste of dust and the quiet promise of secrets buried beyond the sun's reach. Your fingers lingered on the scroll tucked close beneath your cloak, its brittle edges rough against your palm, a tactile reminder of the fragile thread tethering you to this quest. You pressed forward carefully, the rough stone scraping lightly against your skin as you edged into the dim cavity carved by time and sand. The light faded quickly here, muted to a soft gray that blurred the sharp edges of the rock around you, like shadows pulled taut and softened by an unseen hand. You became attuned to the smallest shifts, the gentle scuff of shifting sand beneath your knees, the quiet shifting of fabric with each slow breath, the distant echo of whispered prayers from the waking camp. A faint chill ran along your spine, subtle and electric, as if the chamber itself exhaled softly, breathing the weight of centuries into the still air. The silence held no reassurance, only a suspended expectation that left your nerves humming with quiet urgency. You pressed your hand deeper into the rough stone, feeling the grainy texture beneath calloused fingertips, the cold mercy it offered in contrast to the desert's relentless blaze above. Your eyes traced the intricate curves of the glyph carved long ago, its lines seeming to pulse faintly in rhythm with that low hum, a language older than words. Slowly, you moved further inward, dropping low to keep the shadows as your shield. The cavern walls bore traces of ancient hands, faded scratches, and worn indentations, telling stories you could only guess at. Your breath slowed, melding with the cool exhalations of the earth, your heartbeat softening into a quiet drum beneath it all. The heavy pull of the prophecy weighed on you still, each symbol etched on your scroll, mirroring the worn markings on the rock with a somber precision, binding past and future in a fragile dance. Ahead, the faint flicker of a glow stirred, tentative and dim, as if the chamber acknowledged your presence, slipping a slow thread of light through the damp shadows. You moved closer, the rough stone settling firmly beneath your knees. The air thickened with the scent of dry earth, old smoke, and a trace of something resinous, like burnt cedar, hiding in the folds of time. Your fingers brushed over the scroll again, tracing the delicate lines that now seemed less like charts and more like keys, an invitation to unlock whatever lay just beyond. The silence broke subtly with a soft scrape. The sound rippled through the chamber like a quiet breath, You froze, every nerve prickling in sharp awareness, attuned to the faint movement beyond the dim light. Your eyes adjusted slowly, revealing a shift in the shadows, a slender silhouette, motionless, yet undeniably there, watching from the darkness where the sun dared not reach. The figure blended with the surrounding stone, its presence at once a question and an answer, laden with an unfamiliar stillness that stirred the air between you. The flickering glimmer grew stronger, a pulse now, like a heartbeat beneath the ground, subtle but insistently real. The scroll felt heavier at your side, its fragile weight pressing reminders of the path you had chosen, or perhaps one chosen for you. The chamber exhaled again, faint whispers threading through the silence like winds weaving through the grains of sand outside. You held your breath, steady as stone, the rough texture of the wall grounding you as the figure's outline became sharper, more defined. A faint, almost inaudible murmur floated from that direction, words too soft to catch clearly, yet thick with meaning, threaded through the cool air like a fragile chant. Your pulse steadied but quickened, the desolate calm of the desert replaced by an expectant tension, as if the very rocks were holding their breath alongside you. Every instinct whispered caution, and yet the slow stirring of something ancient and vital called you forward. A delicate thread of hope wound tightly with foreboding. Your hand brushed instinctively over the glyph once more, feeling the slow heat pulsing beneath it, a dim glow spreading like embers in dry wood, awakening in the depths of the silence. The figure remained still, patient and unreadable, a threshold between what you knew and what you could only guess awaited beneath layers of forgotten memory. Outside, the relentless sun climbed higher, scattering pale light across the desert, but here you found yourself suspended in twilight. A breath held between day and night, certainty and doubt, survival and surrender. You took one slow step forward, the air thick with unspoken promises, and, just as the shadow shifted again, a sharp, sudden sound echoed behind you. The faint crack of stone against stone, deliberate and unyielding, as if something ancient, long buried, had finally begun to move. You stood at the threshold between shadow and sun, the air thick with stillness that settled over your skin like a heavy cloak. Your breath came slow, the coolness within the cavern a fleeting contrast to the relentless desert heat pressing just beyond the jagged rocks. Each inhale tasted faintly of earth and dust, dry and sharp at the edges, mingling with the faint metallic tang that lingered in the air, as though the stones themselves whispered of long-buried secrets. Your fingers clung tightly to the brittle scroll beneath your cloak, its fragile weight grounding you amidst the uncertainty that coiled tightly in your chest. The glyph carvings beneath your palm pulsed faintly, as if the stone held a slow heartbeat, steady but unyielding. The soft murmur from the cavern's depths vibrated through the air, its human cadence distant yet unmistakably alive. You swallowed against the dryness, your steps measured and slow as you slid further into the dim, swallowed light. The floor beneath you was rough and uneven, scattered with tiny grit that pressed against your knees and fingers, reminding you of the desert's endless patience. Around you, the walls seemed to close in slightly, worn by centuries of sand and silence. The faint glow grew steadier now, casting trembling shadows that flickered languidly, like old memories teasing the edges of your vision. The scent of ancient smoke, the faint resinous aroma of long-lit incense, and the sharp bite of cold stone wrapped around you in a thick embrace. You paused to draw your cloak tighter, the coarse fabric scratching softly against damp skin. Outside, the hushed chant of the priests had faded into the distance, replaced by the persistent sway of desert wind, threading its way through unseen cracks and crevices. Within this hidden chamber, time felt suspended, a fragile moment between what was known and the mysteries pressing just beyond reach. Your eyes traced the shifting runes etched into the walls, their faint outline mirrored in the folded map you carried. Each curve and line whispered an ancient language, never quite revealing, but always suggesting. The slow pulsing glow from the glyphs mirrored your heartbeat, quiet, consistent. The air vibrated softly with something unspoken, a tension coiled as tightly as the scroll in your grasp. As you moved deeper still, the cavern's cold breath cascaded over your skin like a sigh, a gentle contrast to the sun-baked heat that waited patiently outside. You let your fingers brush across rough stone, the texture grainy and firm beneath your calloused tips. The scent of earth grew stronger, richer, mingled with the faintest trace of something savory and bitter, like dried herbs pressed thin between the pages of your scroll. A soft scrape echoed behind you, a subtle sound swallowed quickly by the cavern's breathing silence. Your breath caught in your throat, and your head turned slowly, eyes narrowing into the darkness. There, just beyond the wavering shadows, the faint outline of the figure shifted ever so slightly. It remained still, a sentinel carved from stone and shadow, silhouetted against a smear of dusk light sneaking past the cavern's mouth. You felt the scroll's weight press harder against your ribs, an unspoken tether drawing you forward and holding you back all at once. The distant fire's crackle from camp sounded muted here, barely a whisper beneath the louder pulse of expectation thrumming beneath your feet. You knelt slowly, hands resting on the uneven floor as your eyes adjusted, waiting for the figure to unfold its true shape. The warmth from the glowing glyphs seemed to spread, a faint radiance that lent an almost sacred stillness to the place. The figure did not move, yet something about its presence was alive, watchful but patient. The thick air around you vibrated faintly with a sound like distant chanting, an echo of voices carried on the wind beyond the rocks. You closed your eyes for a moment, inhaling the cool, musky mix of stone and sand, allowing your racing heart to ease into the rhythm of the desert's slow, eternal breath. A sudden quickening rippled through your nerves as the faint murmur swelled and tapered once more, like the soft echo of a faraway voice caught between night and dawn. The carvings on the wall before you brightened imperceptibly, the glyphs unfolding in slow, deliberate arcs, as if revealing the next piece of a puzzle held tight inside your palms. The light spilled gently onto the figure's edges, revealing a face worn by time, etched with lines of silence and shadow. Eyes that held the same endless desert gaze you saw nightly above. You rose with deliberate calm, feet stirring loose sand as you stepped closer. Every movement weighted with the slow deliberation that the desert demanded. Your fingers brushed the folds of fabric draping the figure, rough and dusty, steeped in the stillness of countless forgotten days. A trace of cold iron hung in the air, and a faint pulse rippled beneath your feet, steady and sure. Behind you, a whispered crack, stone shifting, ancient and slow, reminded you that the desert's silence was not empty, merely patient. The cavern breathed around you, holding its secrets and shadows in a careful balance. The figure turned its gaze toward you then, the faintest motion, and a long, slow exhale seemed to ripple through the chamber. You met those endless eyes, shimmering with the faded light of the stars yet to rise. And in that fragile pause between heartbeats, between shadow and stone, you understood. Whatever waited beyond the shifting sands was no longer hidden. A slow pulse of warmth blossomed beneath your feet, weaving its way up through the cracked earth, pulling you forward to whatever awaited just beyond the reach of day. Slowly, the glowing glyph burned brighter, an ancient promise lighting the path deeper into the unknown. And your breath caught on the edge of something both terrifying and inevitable. Ahead, the darkness whispered your name. You stepped further into the shadowed cavern, the faint glow from the glyph beneath your cloak illuminating the uneven stone walls. The air was cooler here, thick with the scent of damp earth and something faintly metallic that tickled at the edges of your senses, like a half-remembered warning whispered long ago. The darkness curled around you, soft but unyielding, pressing gently against your skin as the desert heat faded to a distant hum behind the rocks. Your bare feet sank lightly into the dirt floor, the grains shifting beneath your toes with a muted patience. Each slow breath was measured, filled with the dry taste of dust, mingled with the lingering incense from the camp. The scroll pressed close against your ribs, its brittle surface crinkling softly with your cautious movements. Your fingers traced the edge of the ancient paper, grounding you to this fragile moment, suspended between the oven-baked daylight and the cavern's cool embrace. A soft crack echoed through the stillness, the shifting weight of sand or stone, a subtle reminder that nothing remained completely still here. You held your breath, senses stretching outward to catch the faintest whisper of sound, the muted footsteps of something unseen, the distant echo of a chant slipping between crevices, the tremor of heat shimmering against the rock face. The glyph's glow pulsed softly as you leaned toward the wall, your palm pressing against the cool stone. The intricate lines seemed alive, shifting subtly, as if the rock itself breathed beneath your touch. It was a rhythm both ancient and slow, like the patient beating of a heart deep within the earth. The light spilled onto your fingers, leaving faint trails of warmth that vanished quickly, a fleeting promise against the cavern's relentless chill. You crouched low, fingers sifting through the fine grit that blanketed the floor. The grains were cool and smooth here, a contrast to the coarse sands that farmed the desert outside. Around you, the chamber seemed to hold its breath, suspended in a fragile balance between shadow and silence. The faint flickering from the glyph spread to other carvings etched faintly into surrounding stones, delicate patterns that hinted at stories you couldn't yet decipher. Each one was a brittle thread in a tapestry too vast, a silent language waiting for your touch. The faintest breeze stirred the still air, brushing dust motes against your skin like the lightest touch of a feather. Carrying with it was the primal scent of dry wood and resin, a trace of burnt cedar or frankincense, perhaps, half remembered from the priest's ritual. The flames at camp crackled distantly, their warmth seeming to reach into this cool hollow like a whisper of comfort broken by the pressing unknown. Your eyes adjusted slowly to the growing shadow beyond the lantern's reach, where shapes shifted just beyond clear sight. A figure remained still, carved from darkness and stone, its presence both a weight and a question. You could feel it watching, patient and unmoving, waiting without need to speak. The scroll, still pressed tight beneath your cloak, reminded you of your fragile tether to a fate you sought to understand, but could not yet grasp. Each movement you made echoed softly, your breath slow, mingling with the cavern's deep, steady hum. The intricate glyph beneath your palm warmed faintly, stirring like embers in dry wood, sending a quiet pulse through your veins that echoed the rhythm of that slow, unyielding glow. You traced the ancient lines again, memorizing the delicate curves and breaks as if they were the last lifeline between you and the uncertain horizon pressing in behind the cavern walls. A sudden shift in the air caught your attention, the granular brush of something sliding quietly across stone, a whispered scrape swallowed instantly by the surrounding silence. Your fingers tightened around the scroll. As your eyes flicked toward the movement, the figure and shadow remained motionless, Yet the presence behind it deepened, a silent promise, a latent power stirring in the depths. You rose slowly, the rough stone beneath your knees cool against your skin, and stepped closer. The flickering glow from the glyph spread dimly into the darkness, revealing faint glints of metal woven into the dust-covered fabric that draped the form ahead. It was a relic of another age, both broken and profound, an echo of ceremonies long silenced by time. The air shimmered as the stone beneath your feet trembled softly, a slow pulse rising from the hidden depths, like a heartbeat finally finding voice after centuries. You paused, breath settling into the cavern's rhythm, as the figure shifted subtly, a deliberate movement that stirred the dust in lazy spirals. The cold iron scent wafted stronger now, reminding you that this place held layers upon layers of history, woven together with danger and hope in equal measure. The faint murmur from deeper within the passage swelled briefly to a whisper, trailing off as if swallowed by the stone itself. You felt the weight of the scroll and the glyph's warmth burn more intensely against your side, a lingering heat that beckoned while warning in equal tone. The cavern embraced you, a vast, silent witness to the moment suspended between revelation and retreat. Outside, the sun continued its cruel climb, casting bright stripes of light that flickered like ghosts across the distant sand. But here, beneath the ancient stones, time folded in on itself. The flickering contours of the figure sharpened, revealing eyes that held the same cold, watchful stillness you saw nightly in the indifferent stars. You met their gaze, still unblinking, and in that fragile meeting, the promise of what lay ahead both chilled and beckoned. Then, just as you reached out, the cavern pulsed, a slow, deliberate quake that trembled through the earth like a deep breath unleashed after long containment. The ground beneath your feet shifted, strong enough to unsettle the dust. The sound of stone grinding stone, echoing faintly against the hollow walls. You froze, every sense alert, the scroll pressed tight as the air thickened with something ancient and unrelenting. The shadows lengthened suddenly, sharper now, folding around you and the figure in a dance as old as the sands themselves. And in that suspended heartbeat of silence, the cavern whispered its final secret. The darkness ahead was no longer empty. Something had awakened. Beyond words, beyond stars, something waiting patiently to step forward into the light. You froze, your breath suspended in the thick air as the cavern's quiet stirred again. The shadowed figure remained still, a monument carved from stone and silence, its form half swallowed by darkness, yet undeniably present. The faint glow from the glyphs wavered, casting a trembling light that kissed the rough walls like gentle fingers tracing ancient scars. Your palm pressed firmly against the stone beside you, feeling the slow pulse beneath, a rhythm as steady and unyielding as the desert itself. Every sound sharpened, the soft scrape of shifting sand beneath your knees, the distant murmur of priests beyond the rocks, their voices folding lightly into the desert wind like a fading hymn. The faint metallic scent clung to the air, mingling with earth and smoke, a perfume heavy with mysteries just out of reach. You inhaled slowly, the coolness inside the cave a stark contrast to the relentless heat pressing against your skin from the world outside. Your fingers brushed the edge of the scroll beneath your cloak, the brittle parchment whispering quietly with each subtle movement. The glyphs seemed to throb in time with your pulse, their faint warmth a tether between you and something ancient, something long dormant, stirring anew. You shifted forward, the rough stone scraping softly against your skin, the texture a cold reassurance against the soft burn of sweat. The shadow shape sharpened with the flutter of the glowing symbols, revealing traces of worn fabric draped like a shroud, dust-covered and stiff, a relic forgotten, yet fiercely guarded by time. The shape exhaled a murmur, a breath, caught somewhere between hope and warning, a thread in the silent tapestry of this cavern's secrets. As you edged closer, your own heartbeat slowed under the cavern's patient gaze, a slow drum beneath the visceral quiet. The hum beneath the stone grew just perceptibly stronger, a low vibration that coursed through the soles of your feet, rising like a silent tide beneath the earth. It wrapped around you, dense and tangible, pulling at the edges of your awareness with a promise you could not yet name. The faint scent of burning cedar deepened, curling around the chamber in languid waves, soft and homespun against the sharper notes of dust and stone. Small particles twirled in the dim light, floating like motes caught in a fleeting beam, their gentle dance a fragile contrast to the weight pressing on your chest. You knelt slowly, fingertips skimming the uneven ground, letting the cool grit press reassuringly into your skin. Beyond the shadow, the cavern's mouth swallowed the harsh sun, offering a veil between the known and the unseen. The chill of shade beckoned, a silent invitation to cross a threshold that felt less like a choice and more like an unfolding certainty. The flickering glyphs traced lazy patterns against your palm, their light pulsing softly, tugging you forward. A whisper stirred at the edge of hearing, a thread of sound that slipped out from the dark, fragile as a sigh. Your breath caught as a faint vibration echoed through the floor, the slow grinding of stone beneath centuries finally shifting. The figure's stillness broke, a subtle tilt of its head, eyes catching what little light remained. Those eyes, twin orbs reflecting. A desert that never sleeps, fixed upon you with a patience deeper than time. You rose carefully, the sands outside pressing close like a forgotten ocean of heat and endless sky. The scroll's weight pressed heavier now, a reminder of the fragile boundary between knowledge and oblivion, the thin line embroidered with every step you had taken into this hidden sanctuary. The air thickened, breaths shallow and slow, the cavern alive with a low acoustic swell that seemed to rise from the depths, as if the earth itself were exhales held too long. Faint sounds drifted from the camp, the crackling of flames, the rustling of worn robes stirred by dry desert wind. Yet here, beneath the stoic stones, these distant noises softened, swallowed by an overwhelming quietude that folded around you like a cloak too heavy, yet oddly comforting. The stone beneath your knees warmed slightly, a slow spread of heat that pried gently at the edges of your resolve. You took a deliberate step toward the figure, fingers trembling as you reached out to brush the dust-covered fabric. It felt coarse beneath your touch, a coarse whisper of long-forgotten rites pressed into faded texture and brittle thread. A chill ran along your spine as the sense of impending revelation thickened. A fragile coil of dread and hope wound tightly together. The glyphs flared brighter, spilling a gentle light that illuminated the cavern's jagged heart. Shadows stretched and recoiled like slow breaths, the air vibrating with a quiet intensity that held your senses taut. The earth groaned beneath your feet, a muted, ancient sound that seemed to shake loose forgotten history. Dust stirred alongside your movement, the soft cascade of grains falling like slow rain upon stone. Your eyes locked with the figure's gaze as it shifted, just so, a subtle acknowledgement, a silent offering of truths held beneath desert sands and starless nights. The warmth you felt grew stronger, pulsing beneath your skin in soft waves. The air between you thickened. The weight of unseen eyes narrowed the space to a fragile thread. Just as you breathed in, steadying your racing heart, a sudden, sharp crack echoed, stone rending stone, deliberate and slow, shaking loose centuries of silence. The cavern trembled, as if the desert itself had exhaled a breath long held. Your gaze whipped toward the darkness beyond, where the faint glimmer of light danced wildly, flickering against fresh fractures in the ancient walls. The shadowed figure remained motionless for a heartbeat longer, then slowly turned, footsteps silent but resolute against the cavern floor. Its presence beckoned without words, drawing you deeper into the winding passage where light and shadow bled into one another. The glyph beneath your palm throbbed fiercely, a living pulse tethered to the unfolding moment. You stepped forward, the cool air thick with unspoken promise and the subtle scent of ash and earth. Somewhere just beyond the flickering light, something breathed, a secret unfolding slowly beneath the desert's watchful stars. The silent chamber waited, vast and patient, as the darkness before you whispered its name. You reached out slowly, your trembling fingers brushing the dust-covered fabric of the figure. The rough texture beneath your touch spoke of stories buried deep beneath the shifting sands. Tales sealed in silence for centuries, now finally poised to surface. The cavern's air thickened, carrying the faint scent of ancient incense and dry earth, weaving around you like a final breath before a long-awaited revelation. The figure's shape shifted imperceptibly, its eyes, cold, unwavering, locking with yours. In that steady gaze, you felt the weight of untold knowledge and the quiet acceptance of what must come next. The pulse beneath the glyphs, beneath your palm, grew steady and warm. A gentle fire that no longer threatened, but beckoned. With each breath, a calm settled over you, smoothing the jagged edges of doubt and fear that had long clung to your skin like the desert dust. Hands steady now, you slipped the scroll from beneath your cloak, unrolling it slowly to reveal the final lines of the ancient prophecy. The symbols aligned perfectly with those carved in stone, their meaning no longer cryptic of endurance beyond the stars' cold gaze. Outside, the desert wind whispered softly, carrying away the last traces of burning embers from the priest's fires. A pale light filtered through the cavern's mouth, bathing the chamber in a gentle glow that softened the sharp contours of stone and shadow alike. It was as if the earth itself exhaled relief, releasing the long-held breath of history in a quiet sigh. You knelt beside the figure, your palm pressed once more against the warm glyph, feeling the slow rhythm of the earth beneath. The silent sentinel beside you no longer seemed a guardian of doom, but a witness to the promise unfolding, a bridge between past and future, shadow and light. A subtle breeze drifted through the cavern, stirring the fine grit beneath your knees, brushing cold against your skin. The scent of dry cedar mingled with the lingering incense, fragrant and calming, like a lullaby sung beneath the sun's relentless blaze. You closed your eyes briefly, allowing the weight of the moment to settle deep into your bones. The distant murmurs from the camp faded into a soft hum, replaced by a profound quiet, a solitude rich not with loneliness, but with completion. Your heart's steady beat echoed gently, harmonizing with the unfathomable stillness of the sands beyond. The stars above, once inscrutable and foreboding, now seemed like old friends, watching patiently from their vast vigil. Slowly you rose, the scroll tucked carefully back beneath your cloak. The path outside stretched wide, the desert's endless expanse welcoming you back, not as a place of fear or fate, but as a canvas for new beginnings. Each grain of sand beneath your feet felt less a burden and more a testament, a silent witness to the journey that had led you here. As you stepped into the open, the sun hovered low on the horizon, its pale light spilling warmth across the dunes with a gentle touch. The heat no longer smothered, but embraced, as if the desert itself acknowledged the fragile victory etched in quiet resolve. Behind you, the stone cluster stood still, a monument carved by time and trial. The flickering glow from the ancient glyphs dimmed slowly, retreating into the rock's memory. There's a secret shared and now fulfilled. The murmuring priests, no longer chanting out of fear, but in measured reverence, moved among the camp with a new calm in their eyes. The old rituals persisted, but tonight they carried a different weight, not a desperate plea against fate, but a humble celebration of the fragile thread of survival woven by the stars themselves. You paused, breathing deeply the mingled scents of cedar, smoke, and cool night air beginning to settle over the dunes. The chill that crept over the desert was no longer a warning, but a promise of rest. The sky above deepened, the first stars appearing quietly, no longer distant or menacing, but gentle and watchful companions. In this vast silence, you felt the story both ending and beginning. Tomorrow would come with its endless heat and whispered prayers, but tonight, the sands held their secrets close, and you could finally rest. The stars blinked softly overhead, their ancient light a ticking lullaby carried on the cool desert breeze. Step by step, breath by measured breath, the desert exhaled its endless story, inviting you to find peace beneath its silent watch. You settled back onto the sand, coarse but familiar, the vast expanse folding gently around you. The night's cool embrace wrapped low over the dunes, and as your eyes fluttered closed, the last pulse of warmth radiated softly from the earth beneath, the desert's quiet blessing on a fate fulfilled. Here, beneath the indifferent sky, you let the shadow of prophecy fade into restful night, carried on the timeless breath of the stars.